Hi, my name is Christopher Malcolm, and welcome to Movable Canvas, where we talk about cinema, art, culture, and where those three things intersect. In today's episode, we'll take a walk on the wild side with John Garfield and Lana Turner in the 1946 film noir, The Postman Always Rings Twice. Directed by Tay Garnett and based on a novel by James M. Cain, the film follows the story of a drifter who stops in one day at a roadside diner somewhere just outside of Los Angeles. He goes in for a meal, but after one look at the owner's wife, his life will never be the same. I've never read the book, but have seen both versions of The Postman Always Rings Twice, this one as well as the 1981 version starring Jack Nicholson and Jessica Lange. I bring up that film because watching the two films side by side is kind of a good lesson in how the same story can be handled completely differently depending on who's telling it. From what I understand, the Nicholson version sticks a lot closer to the source material than the version we'll be discussing today. And while Jack Nicholson is a great actor and one of my own personal favorites, to me, the 1946 version with John Garfield and Lana Turner is the one that I will always think about when I hear the title, The Postman Always Rings Twice. I once heard Eddie Mueller of TCM describe this cleverly as Hollywood noir. Noir was often the domain of Poverty Row Productions, but this version is what happens when film noir is produced at the full power of a Hollywood studio. All the pulp you'd expect with the added layer of gloss of the studio production. The genre of film noir has gone through a bit of a resurgence in recent years among film lovers. I've even started hearing people refer to the month of November as Noirvember, which I would totally get on board with if, for me, every movie wasn't Noir Month. It's probably my favorite genre, well, that and romantic comedies, which I understand is kind of a really strange pairing. But I love the power of noir to unveil darker stories within the soul of humanity and touch on larger societal issues, but do so within the context of a lean and entertaining story format. Our often doomed protagonists wander into a world of the unknown where the motivations are as dark and slippery as the night streets and quickly find themselves swimming upstream against an unwavering current. Our protagonist in this film is played by John Garfield. John Garfield is one of the most interesting presences in film history, both for his prodigious talent as well as his place in history, on and off the screen. We often think of Marlon Brando as the man who changed acting in movies forever when he burst onto the scene first in The Men in 1950, then launching into the stratosphere with A Streetcar Named Desire in 1951. Overnight it seemed that everything we thought we knew about acting up to that point was wrong. The absolute rawness and truth Brando brought to his roles being the result of his training in the method, a new form of acting a million miles away from the more formal acting methods prevalent at the time. Brando gave way to James Dean and Montgomery Clift, all coming from this new world of acting technique, and every actor since then has to a large degree been living in their shadow. But what is often overlooked is before Brando, there was John Garfield. He was really the first person to bring the method to Hollywood. His ever-burning intensity always setting him apart from other actors of the time. The method, which put an emphasis on actors connecting their real emotions to their characters' emotions, led to Garfield always seeming as though there was a fever constantly boiling just beneath the surface. There was a danger about him, an unpredictability, and it was impossible to take your eyes off him when he was on the screen. He was a stalwart of film noir. His characters always seemed tougher than the other guy, but because Garfield brought a unique vulnerability to his tough guys, we always get a certain sense that maybe, just maybe, he's not as tough as he thinks he is. Of course, no matter how tough and street smart Garfield's character, Frank Chambers, might think he is, no man is a match for Lana Turner. If you ever find yourself wondering how a smart man could be led astray, just have a look at the introductory shot of Lana Turner in that doorway. You know, even the most reserved man would have a hard time keeping his heart rate down if he saw a woman like that standing in front of him. As many times as I've seen the movie, seeing her standing there wearing a completely impractical outfit for a woman who's supposed to be working in a burger joint, my heart never fails to skip a beat. Now, I'm not saying that plotting a murder to get a woman's husband out of the picture is ever a good thing. I'm just saying that one look at Lana Turner and, well, I get how the thought might cross your mind. Then again, as I was rewatching the film last week in advance for writing this essay, I was actually struck by the murkiness of the character's motivations. Lana Turner's character, Cora Smith, is no doubt one of the great femme fatales in film history. But unlike some more ruthless women who have earned the same moniker, it's not always so clear that Cora Smith is pure evil. Even as the complications of the plot arise when she professes her love to Frank, I still kind of believe her. Her affections don't really read as purely manipulative. There are real emotions there. In fact, given a different set of circumstances, it's incredibly easy to see how Frank and Cora's story could have played out quite differently. When Frank first sees Cora, he has no idea that she's the wife of Nick Smith, played by Cecil Kellaway, the owner of the restaurant. Given the age difference between Nick and Cora, Frank logically just assumes that he's pretty much the luckiest man on earth to have ended up in the same room with this woman. When Frank plays it cool and doesn't instantly bend the knee to Cora's presence like most men would, his defiance gets under her skin. It's immediately evident that there's a certain animal attraction between these two. Yet still, once it becomes apparent that Cora isn't just another employee, but is in fact Nick's wife, his first urge is to leave. Unlike the Jack Nicholson version, where the idea that Jack is on some level a born Lothario who isn't likely to be too bothered by the prospect of betting another man's wife, one does get the sense that John Garfield didn't wake up that day intending to destroy someone else's marriage. But the attraction between Garfield and Turner is just so powerful that it's really their passion that gets them into trouble. Even more than greed and ambition, they simply can't seem to leave each other alone. This dynamic plays out throughout the film. The original idea of murdering the husband is actually first uttered by Frank, not Cora. But though it is first brought up as a joke, the idea kind of continues to fester as the passion between them continues to grow. I don't want to give too much away from the plot, but later in the film when Frank and Nora's legal and physical peril grows, they actually each have legitimate opportunities to leave one another behind. Were they not so attracted to each other, this could have worked out completely differently. Fate does provide them an out and more than their fair share of good fortune, yet the gravitational pull between them continues to put them into increasingly dangerous circumstances. Speaking of dangerous circumstances, let's pause for a moment to give full credit to the wonderful Hume Cronin. Given his kind of diminutive stature and me watching him in movies like Cocoon when I was a kid growing up, it's tempting for me to think of Hume Cronin as a mild-mannered grandfather. But after watching him both in this as well as Brute Force, both within the last 2 weeks, I have to say that this man could be intimidating as heck on screen when he wanted to be. And as morally questionable attorney Arthur Keats, he doesn't disappoint. Rewatching the film this time, I was actually really struck by the complexity of the lead character's motivations. Aside from Garfield and Turner's enormous charisma, they each bring so much depth to their roles, which is often overlooked in favor of such a delicious plot. You almost know where the story will go from the first moment we see Lana Turner standing in the doorway, but what is so fascinating is watching the demise of these two characters who can't seem to get out of their own way. Of course, the demise of John Garfield off-camera was decidedly less self-inflicted. His own light cut short not from a lack of talent or discipline. Instead, John Garfield was a fundamentally honest man, and it was that honesty that killed him. When he found himself swept up in the disgraceful communist witch hunts of the 1940s and 50s, Garfield, who was not a communist, was singled out as a scapegoat by politicians looking to make a name for themselves at the expense of others. By refusing to kowtow or hurt others in order to save his own skin, Garfield got the worst possible sentence. His promising career and good name were taken from him at the height of his abilities. The stress affected his health. This led to his premature death at the age of 39, and the world of cinema being robbed of one of its greatest talents. Film noir is often about a doomed man doing his best to find a way out of a difficult situation. We watch the films knowing the odds are stacked against him, but hoping that he'll find a way clear. I wish the world had been such that John Garfield could have found his way clear. The world and the movies would be better for it. Thanks for watching another episode of Movable Canvas. If you like this kind of deep dive into the greatest films in Hollywood history, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and you'll be notified when the next episode is released. And let me know in the comments what you thought about the film. Have you read the original book? Which version of the film do you prefer, the 1946 or the 1981? And what other movie entrances rank among tops alongside Lana Turner standing in the doorway? Not many. But I'd love to hear your suggestions. Until next time, thanks for watching and have a great day.